Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Andy, we get to not only handicap who is likely to win the NFC East today, but maybe the NFC overall. All apologies to the San Francisco 49ers. But it does feel like win equity in the National Football Conference really comes down to today's two teams.
25 wins between these two teams last year. I'm not sure, not even they both had playoff wins, obviously one a few more than the other. And look at the colors of our shirts today, Drew.
Oh.
I'm wearing
what team are you gonna stump for?
I mean, to be fair, I'm only wearing shit. I wonder how long I could go only wearing stuff that was given to me, like free shirts and hats and whatnot.
Sounds like a good
nobody
challenge.
Nobody gives you shorts. Like merch people need to get on that. I need more shorts and more shoes. But I'm flush on shitty t-shirts. So yeah, let's just dive right in. The Cowboys, man. I'm ready to get right into it. And it's another one too, where it's just like, oh yeah, like this team was super good. And this team was super good on both sides of the ball. And, basically, I don't know, what held them back was late season injuries to the cornerback room where they lacked a little bit of depth. And then Dak throwing just an absolute shitload of interceptions. There's some signal that some of it wasn't always his fault, but still, there were so many games with like multiple interceptions. He didn't, and that's the thing, like he was tied for the lead in interceptions, which sounds bad. And then you say, hey, remember when he didn't even play for 5 weeks and we had Cooper Rush? Like he led the league in interceptions after only playing 11, 12 games. So kind of a rough season from that standpoint, from an otherwise pretty efficient offense. And if that goes away and their rushing attack gets better, because it might just get better, getting rid of the guy that was, putting out under 4 yards a carry.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the depth took a little bit of a hit with the suspension, but I looked at this team and said, shit, it's a pretty good team. What's going to hold us back? So let's start with talking about the coaching changes.
Okay, so we can get there. It's been a rough 5 months for Mr. McCarthy.
Beleaguered.
I don't know at what point we're going to get to the point where I say it out loud, but I think that the sentiment has swung too far and he is now underrated, because I don't feel that way right now. But I think
it's close.
It's trending. I think my 2022 recollection of the Cowboys was, the points you bring up are fair. Doesn't feel great to lose depth at the 6th cornerback position. Doesn't feel great to be without your starting quarterback for a good portion of the season. Doesn't feel great to have your quarterback regress from a turnover standpoint. But I think the Cowboys did everything they were asked to do last year. But the problem was they kind of were scheduled to get second in this division because their schedule was much, much tougher than the Eagles. And in reality, you put the two teams side by side on paper, very similar strength rosters last year. Tough to say who's actually better. We hadn't seen Jalen Hurts put together an MVP-esque campaign to that point, but it was still pretty clear that side by side, there was not a lot of space between those two teams, and the Eagles had a much easier schedule. So I think there was kind of nothing the Cowboys could have done differently, I don't think, to get themselves in a better position to make a playoff run. They were going to have to do it on the road. They got an impressive win on the road. They were very knocking on the door against the Niners on the road, by the way, in a game they lost by 5. But yeah, I mean, this Cowboys team, I think, exceeded expectations last year.
I'd say from a standpoint of what we thought you could get out of that roster, probably right on cute. Like second week of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
getting a playoff win, losing the second week to they needed Niners to run out of quarterbacks a little earlier than they did. And we'll get to that when we talk about Philly. But no, I think kind of spot on for what we expected out of a team with a lot of talent on it on both sides of the ball. Some really big stars, some big names on defense. And, it's funny too, of all the trials and then tribulations as well, the one that hurt them the least, at least in the in the win-loss column, was losing your starting quarterback, who's for all intents and purposes a top 10 quarterback most years.
Mm-hmm.
It's losing him for 5 weeks didn't hurt nearly as bad as having some attrition, due to some injuries in the secondary, or just kind of general problems keeping up with the who's who. Because I don't know. Once we got into the playoffs, I mean, the win, that felt right, but it didn't feel like a team we were going to expect them to take down two pretty good teams 2 weeks in a row and get anywhere after that. So it was tough. And like you said, that record wins a lot of divisions and changes, maybe doesn't completely change a fortune, but having home games matters, especially in the playoffs. And it was kind of it was a rough go having the Eagles ahead of you.
That record wins the NFC South by 4 games. And oh, by the way, they might have had more than 12 wins if they had been in the NFC South.
Patrick's asking about week 1. We can go back a little into some of these games, but Tampa Bay's defense was very good.
They showed up,
and they showed up with a electric game plan. That total was we had that under.
Yeah,
that was like one. That 50. Was the one.
Yeah.
Like from the whole first quarter of the season, that was the one that was like felt good about victory lapping. Because like Dallas. I mean, Tampa maybe shouldn't have scored that much.
We double dipped in the second half. That was a beauty. Remember from the Las Vegas airport? I remember. It was a weird one. That what happened in that game largely. I mean, not only did Dak get hurt, which mattered, but they lost starting left tackle Teron Smith not long before the season started, and they didn't have a swing tackle, and so they had to kind of figure things out on the fly. Now, ultimately, the guy they ended up having play that role for the balance of the season was excellent last year, and we can get
just
into
not right off the bat.
Just not right off the bat. Yeah. They the high pressure blitz campaign that Todd Bowles brought into that the contest mattered a lot. They were dominant. Tampa's defense was fully healthy there, which also mattered. But you're right. Cooper Rush comes in and he wins 4 out of 3 as a dog, 4 straight, but 3 of those they were underdogs. He wins 4 straight games, 3 as an underdog, loses to Eagles, almost covers weirdly at Philly. And then I believe Dak was back for the Detroit game, and Dak went on a nice little run. Although, as you mentioned, he had a pretty turnover prone campaign. I think he led the league or tied with Davis Mills for interceptions.
Davis Mills and him.
Yeah. But it was uncharacteristically sloppy, but at the same time, like, he was taking some chances. He was doing some stuff. He was being, he definitely used his mobility, I think, pretty effectively, especially down the stretch. And he got a hard fought win against Tampa Bay on the road in playoffs, which was nice feather in his cap because he really had not had the playoff success until that point. He did, however, I think, lay an egg to a degree against the Niners, although the Niners defense was just playing with absolute gas at that point in the season. So that was going to be a tough contest regardless. 2 picks in that one. I think the game plan was a little suspect. They had a chance late to drive and score. Didn't really put anything spectacular together. The rushing attack was a non-factor in that one. They got beat, but it was close. I think Mike McCarthy not only saved his job by winning in Tampa Bay, but earned the right to be his own offensive coordinator the following year, as he was kind of given the keys to make those decisions. The Cowboys games that I remember the most fondly, besides the under week 1, I definitely had a nice position on them against the Giants when they were 1-point dogs on Monday Night Football week 3. That was awesome. I went heavy on Eagles in what was a very lucky cover week 6. I don't remember any especially tough losses. My favorite win by far was at Minnesota, 40-3.
Not a sweaty
As
one.
a small favorite.
Yeah.
Really, really memorable game, largely because at that time people were like, Minnesota's they're like 10-1 or whatever. They were no one respects us. We're dogs at home to Dallas. How could this be? And you come out of that game like, oh, you should have been more of a dog than you were, because you are not close to that team in terms of.
I mean, and at that point too, I think it was a little both underestimating Dallas. Like, close game at Lambeau, lost in overtime. The Eagles, like, there's no shame in anyone losing to the Eagles, especially at the Link. And then the week 1, just trying to figure out the offensive line going up against your worst nightmare as far as a kind of a front 7.
Mm-hmm.
So they beat the Bengals. They beat,
weird game, weird win. Yeah.
It was, but they got it done. It was a home game. They beat the Lions, and that's not like, oh, you beat the Lions, but they held the Lions to 6 points.
Yeah.
That's definitely worth something. The Bears game.
I'm sure I lost an over on that one, by the way. There's no way I thought 30 points was coming.
Yeah, they had they did have a few games like that. Like we had those 2017 Bengal wins, but then when they played some of these bad teams, and I don't want to put Minnesota in the realm of bad teams, but if we're talking bad defenses, I sure as shit will. 40 on Minnesota, 49 on the Bears, 54 on the Colts. I think like 50 of those points were in the fourth quarter. So
33. That was a Sunday night special. I think we had Cowboys second half in that one, and it might have been like a pick 'em. And they scored 33-0 in the fourth quarter.
You know, the second Eagles game was a bit of weirdness with the players that were missing from that game. Still didn't see a 70-point game coming there, but
no, that was one of the most profitable games of the season, though, because it middled.
It did middle.
If you got it right at the right time.
That landed on 6.
Yeah, for some reason in the back of my head, I thought that landed on 3, and it was like a perfect smack dab middle, but it was not. You had to time that right, because that got out to 6.5, and then that was the inflection point, and it closed inside 6. It closed at 4.5. So it didn't middle the close, but it certainly middled the opener, which was, I think, around a pick 'em. Got bet out as people realized that Hurts wasn't going to go, and then
you could get like a 3 and a 6.
Yeah, you got a pick and a 6. I think it was a big fat middle. That was the Christmas Eve miracle. Awesome. But
overarching thoughts on the season. It was a good team that kind of got lost in the discussion of which teams were really good last year, because we focused so much on these young quarterbacks and these upcoming teams in the AFC, and just, the Eagles starting 8-0, the Eagles making this run with a newer quarterback, newer coach, kind of a new regime, a new dynasty to be started up there in Philly if they do things right. And obviously the Niners story was so fun too, with Mr. Irrelevant getting plugged into that offense, and they still just kept trucking. Dallas was kind of a forgotten storyline, and it's crazy because that's America's team, man. That's a team that you want to. If you're a broadcast, you want to have Dallas games. Like you want to be talking about Dallas. And
I don't know, man.
I don't know. This is like and you have a top 5 defensive coordinator probably.
Well, yeah, that was the major takeaway. The offense probably underachieved a little bit, or maybe they correctly achieved. They were 10th in EPA per play. But the big story, everybody coming into the season was, well, Dallas's defense is going to regress. They were the beneficiaries of so many turnovers in 2021.
What were your
That's going to come back to earth.
Yeah, the 3 biggest regression narratives in preseason were the Bengals, Super Bowl hangover. They won't be good again. Finally going to regress. The Dallas defense, and then I don't know. I'm trying to think of the third big one, I guess. Honestly, it was probably Kansas City's offense. Like, they can't do it without Tyreek.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, it'll still be good because it's Andy and Patrick, but is it going to be good? And
there was some narrative around Tua being able to make the deep pass, and I remember that being shattered pretty quick. The Cowboys, I think you come out of the season with, well, yeah, I mean, they still didn't quite get it in terms of running back usage. Tony Pollard should have gotten the ball a lot more than he did. They didn't really have any second or third options in the wide receiver position. That needs to be fixed. The offense in general was a little stagnant, where they could use a new voice there. And the defense was perfect. It was awesome. They have the best player on earth who snaps up on the other side of the ball in Micah Parsons. And if they can retain Dan Quinn as their defensive coordinator, this unit is going to kick ass again next year. Well, let's go over those points. They retain Dan Quinn. Micah Parsons is still the best defensive player on earth. Wonderful. They say goodbye to Zeke Elliott. Tony Pollard, now your future back in the running back room. That's a positive. They went out and got Brandon Cooks, addressed the the wide receiver 2 position. Michael Gallup now a full year recovered from his ACL. Maybe he's even wide receiver 2.5, 3. Maybe, we can argue about that a little bit in terms of whether that was the right move, but okay, you address that problem. Offense is a little stagnant. Let's get a new voice in the locker room. They let Kellen Moore go, and they give the keys to Mike McCarthy. And that's, I think, maybe the only aspect of reflecting on last year that gives anyone pause about the Cowboys at all. Because everything else that we just kind of laid out, they sort of systematically addressed the clear needs around the team to make themselves a little bit more dangerous than what was already a very good team last year, in my opinion, except for the offensive coordinator. And so I think we are going to learn quickly in the first quarter of this season whether the departure of Kellen Moore is going to, and the insertion of McCarthy, based on the way that the Cowboys and the Chargers ultimately start their seasons, we'll know a little bit whether Moore was a valuable asset and whether that helps elevate the Chargers and if it hurts the Cowboys. I don't think there's anyone that's going to look at what McCarthy does from the offensive scheming and play calling standpoint with this year's offense and this personnel group and is like, wow, we really underestimated that guy, right? But maybe they're a little sharper because Kellen Moore might not have been adding much. I mean, that's entirely plausible in my mind. And so I kind of want to zero in on McCarthy for a second, because this is it for him. Like, if he realistically, if he's not in the NFC Championship game this year, I think he's probably done there. Right? Like, you don't take over the offensive play calling duties and then equal a round 2 of the playoffs and not face a little bit of scrutiny, I don't think. And so I think you need to take a step forward to retain your job if you're McCarthy. But I also think in the weakness that exists in the NFC, and if you can, kind of flip the schedule luck on your opponent's head, that you could be hosting NFC Championship game this year. Entirely plausible. So, McCarthy to me is not a guy that I'm like dying to hire, not a guy that I'm excited to see have the keys. But I can really only say that the most important criticism is in-game decision making stinks.
So and that's what we saw with teams that we talk about, where it's like, hey, this isn't a bad head coach, but the in-game decision making is so negative that it drags them down, because suddenly you can, that was a 10% win probability swing by doing that late in the game. Like, that's massive when it's literally a guy making a multiple choice question and it wasn't an interception. It wasn't a missed field goal. It was a person making a decision for your team and making that wrong decision. Obviously you can go back to like probably the Chargers a little bit with their OC work. And then obviously Tampa Bay, we can probably discuss a little bit of that as well. But the thing is, I could have accepted this. I've always been on this bandwagon of like, there's no archetype for this is the exact kind of coach we need. Now, we obviously know there's trends that go through the NFL, and it's like, everyone's doing this and we're all hiring this kind of guy, and everyone had to have a Cliff Kingsbury for a little bit, and everyone had to have a McVay, and maybe it's still not bad to have a McVay, but it's like, hey, if you have a defensive-minded head coach, you have to have Josh McDaniels and probably a good Hall of Fame quarterback. Didn't hurt either, but like, you have to have that complementary piece. If you have, Kevin O'Connell, even up in Minnesota, you need a good defensive coordinator to go along with that. And you need someone who jives well with you. And I could have been fine with the McCarthy stuff if they'd have brought in, even if it said this guy isn't calling plays, he's just going to be a big part of the game planning, because calling the plays is important, but the work that goes in throughout the week between all of the offensive coaches is so massive. And we have just not seen Schottenheimer really be like, oh, that guy's really putting a good game plan together. And maybe McCarthy was more of a driving force than we know, and we'll be sitting with egg on our face. But if they'd have brought in somebody that I, respected from another tree of smart game planning coaches who put together good schemes, you see, we talk so much about second half adjustments, fucking first half adjustments is like coming in with the game plan that works against your opponent instead of just, hey, this is what we do, so we're going to do it every week. The biggest example of that, obviously, the Patriots-Rams Super Bowl, where they went in with a goddamn game plan, and I haven't seen anything work like that in the Super Bowl in quite a while. But I'm not confident in the Schottenheimer-McCarthy marriage. So it's crazy for me to say. Like, the most confidence I have in anybody here is Dan Quinn.
Yeah, you know what you ought to done? Go get Todd Monken.
Yeah.
Todd Monken has experience with these guys. Like that would have been a perfectly fine hire. He ends up in Baltimore. If you were going to pick somebody from the Seattle with the Seattle background, go steal Shane Waldron. Like, I know it's a lateral move, but you could give him more power, more money in Dallas than he's getting in Seattle. And that guy obviously has things cooking. Like, there were a lot of other options they could have gone here, and I don't get why they went where they went. And ultimately, if they don't succeed this year, and by success, I mean make it to an NFC Championship game, then I think it's clean slate season here, because Dan Quinn almost certainly is going to get another job because his defense is outstanding. And he definitely seems to have the right vision for what it means to use elite pieces in today's NFL. So, I think he's probably not long for your locker room.
Yeah, Hackett would have been better, because Schottenheimer got a little bit of shine because his first year as OC, it was a really good year for that Seattle offense. But it's one of those where it's like, hey, Gruden won a Super Bowl with someone else's players. Or honestly, he Barry Switzered that shit. Like, Barry Switzer wasn't like, he didn't put that team together. He just took Jimmy Johnson's sloppy seconds and beat up a bunch of other teams that weren't as good as him because they had so much talent on that roster.
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of thing. I don't give Schottenheimer a ton of credit for the 2099, one of those seasons where we did see a pretty good offense up in Seattle. And then 2 years later, he's getting shit canned for, I believe there was just differences in opinion on how the offense should run. Other people thought it should be good, and he thought it should be done his way instead.
Yeah.
Let me recap. We spent a lot of time on the recap, but we should get to some of the changes.
Real quick, final criticism on McCarthy. Second year in a row, you end the playoffs with the ball in your hand and no shot at a win against the Niners. It's kind of wild. Very famously 2 years ago, the game ended with a Dak spike or a kneel. He slid. It was a slide. Clock
in the middle of the field.
You never got your end zone shot. You lose by 6. This one was even wilder ending because in hindsight you're like, well, San Francisco was a better team. They won. They covered, whatever. Like, you just kind of dismiss it all. The Cowboys got the ball back with 3 minutes and a 5-point deficit. Like, stop me if you've heard this one before, but Kyle Shanahan got super conservative. Yeah, Kyle Shanahan got super conservative at the end of that game, and I guess it was a 7-point game. Excuse me. Kyle Shanahan got super conservative and kicked a field goal to make a one-score game with 3 minutes left. Dallas Cowboys get the ball back, and at that point, I don't know what in the world happened, but the offensive scheming and kind of vision of what you were trying to do, when it was like everybody was just staring at themselves. Dak incomplete to Schultz. Dak incomplete to Gallup. Dak sacked. Punt. Your defense holds on for dear life. Does not let the Niners run out the clock. You get the ball back again with 45 seconds left. Dak incomplete to Schultz. Dak complete to Schultz. Dak complete to Schultz. Those two passes in a row were both like, really? Like, this is the plan? Like, we're in emergency mode. You're in your 6-yard line. You're going to roll out Dak and have him, bootleg past to Dalton Schultz. Like, it was like, I guess, so you're not serious about trying to score here, I guess.
Yeah, just throwing the deck chairs off at that point. It was like, what? This isn't gonna work.
No,
and because you had a chance, like you see that, and that's where the decision making makes me wonder sometimes about more, and what we might see, because that was just, I think the biggest thing, and we're not talking about a player or a coach that's on this team right now, but the biggest takeaway when I did dive into Kellen Moore a little bit was how good they were in the red zone.
Sure.
And I mean, if I didn't actually go back and do this, but I wanted to look at this at like, what if the Chargers were like 20% better in the red zone last year? Like, just go through each game and be like, I'm going to roll dice and they're going to score on these two that they didn't score on. And, like, what would their record be? Because that was such a massive leak for them. So I'm still a little hesitant on Kellen Moore because of things like you're just talking about right now. But the red zone stuff is just such a selling point for me.
This was just like I felt like everyone was just staring at each other and nobody knew what to do.
And I honestly want to put some of this on Dak. Like,
but like,
you need to be aggressive in those spots. I don't know if it was in his head that, hey, I've thrown way too many fucking interceptions this year. I can't be aggressive anymore.
I don't know, man. You have like 8 plays to save your season and you target Dalton Schultz 6 times. Like, okay. Like, CeeDee Lamb didn't get targeted once down the stretch in that game after having gotten 13 targets in the game. Did he get hurt or something? And I'm just misremembering. I don't think he was. I think he was out there. He was just a decoy. Why the one guy, and honestly, and if you're going to go with the short stuff and you're going to try to, play on the prevent, Tony Pollard was out, right? Tony Pollard hurt his foot in that game. So you didn't have Pollard. So literally your only option if you were going to try to pick on the short stuff was your tight end. I don't know, man. Yeah, it was a mess. It was a mess down the stretch. You played well enough to be in that game. Your defense kept you in that game. Your defense held the great Brock Purdy to 19 points. All you needed to do is get to 20, and you're in the NFC Championship game. You couldn't get it done. Didn't feel great about the Cowboys after that particular loss, I got to say. So, off-season grades.
The Zeke.
Yeah. Oh, man. Jesus, I forgot about that.
Off-season, and I did like a couple of the moves. It's like when you talk about any of the other teams that had double-digit or better wins, it's like, some of this is luxury moves at this point. You don't have to do a ton. Obviously, there were some spots they definitely saw like, oh, if we lose a couple corners, like our secondary is kind of shit. So I liked you went out and got a really good corner. You got a decent wide receiver, and I don't hate the moves. I think just overall, and then you had some depth at the defensive line with the draft. You got a gigantic bleeping tight end. That guy's like 7'3". Like, I like the additions, all things considered, what they needed.
Mm-hmm.
Little help on the line here and there. Some depth would have been good.
Yeah. I don't hate their personal moves really at all. Gilmore was a coup. Cooks, fine. Actually, I take it back. Would it have been too hard to try to make a deal to bring in a Mike Evans? Or someone who's like in a little bit of an uncomfortable situation who could potentially be available to really upgrade your wide receiver too? Because like what really distinguishes Philly's attack is they have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith.
Yeah.
Well, you've got CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks, I guess. I don't know. I'm just not a Cooks guy. I feel like I don't feel like you're ever going to break a game open with Brandon Cooks. I'm sorry. Been on too many teams, been around too long, doesn't really have a game-breaking speed anymore that I can see on tape. As a wide receiver too, probably works. He's probably productive, but I really wish they had kind of gone for a bigger swing and try to bring in a piece via trade from some wide receiver who was available at a disgruntled kind of a price.
It was a down year. He missed a couple games, but the 2 years prior, he had 1,000-yard seasons for,
Is he a complimentary piece to CeeDee Lamb though? Like there's just a little too much. He's like CeeDee Lamb light.
There's some overlap between the three.
Yeah. I don't know why you didn't decide we need a different type of receiver to complement these guys. So we're going to do this. Instead, you got CeeDee Lamb Jr.
It's kind of a theme in this division, like the Giants, just getting 18 slot guys.
Just completely locked in. Yeah. Stephon Gilmore, on the other hand, I thought was a really, really nice addition. I could see him having a couple of productive years here in Dallas. And boy, oh boy, does that complement your defense perfectly. You didn't need much on your defense. Like that's a group that, as I look at on paper, is only weak at the linebacker position, off ball linebacker position. They could get into some situations where they're struggling to stop the run because I'm not an LVE guy personally. I think he's squarely overrated. I'm not a Damon Clark guy. I don't have a very high rating on him. I have him below replacement level. The depth is bad there as well. Really, you're just counting on Micah Parsons doing everything, which is good because he can. And the other pieces that you put around him, especially on that defensive line, they're great. You have really good interior pass rush, and your secondary now is quite strong. I thought you were a little
you went and got a CB1 and you already have he's a bit boomer bust, but as much shit as people talk about, well, go look at this play for Diggs.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take the boom.
Oh hell yeah,
for sure. For some of the busts that they give up, especially considering I like this pass rush, I like this defense as a whole. You said maybe some coverage issues with the off ball, mid-range coverage issues, but nobody's perfect. So I have it rated as like both sides of the ball. Your ceiling is well within the top 10.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Like this is top 5 for both sides if things ever go right. Obviously, the defense has a higher ceiling. The offense would probably need Brandon Cooks to really be a huge surprise if we want to take a step forward. And obviously, we're struggling with a little depth at the running back room suddenly. But overall, I don't know what Kellen Moore was. This grade becomes a D if it turns out like he's the next offensive-minded head coach that you let go to keep Mike McCarthy and bring in Shoddy. But right now, I mean, it's a solid B+, because like you said, the Gilmore deal is really, really good.
Yeah. Plus, handing the keys to Tony Pollard. Love it. I guess the one thing I'll say about this roster that I want your opinion on, you kind of pointed out that they had some health issues in the secondary throughout the balance of the season. And I agree with that. They definitely did. I will say that the reps that they got with those young guys and the ability that Dan Quinn showed to kind of coach them up to above replacement level was apparent as they arced up through that service time. And I think now you actually have like a surprisingly deep and good secondary, even if it doesn't like pop on paper with star power beyond, Diggs' ability to take the ball away. Like all these guys got meaningful snaps and really did quite well. Like Jaron Kearse, I didn't expect much from him. Malik Hooker, I didn't expect much from him. Those guys were both very serviceable players at safety and free safety and strong safety. Deron Bland was a strong nickelback for you. You got good service time out of Jordan Lewis. Like all these kind of depth pieces in your secondary room got field time last year. And
guys that are going to be called on
did pretty well
for like 10 to 20 snaps per game, or, relegated to backups,
specialty packages, all that.
Special teams, right. Specialty packages. Like, hey, we got to throw, dime plus here. And like, it's great to have those guys to have a bunch of, starting reps. Like that bolsters your depth. It's painful. That secondary was painful to watch late in the season when they're missing, got Brown. It was something. But like you said, getting that depth is good. So let's take a look at who they play this year.
Wait, actually, let me kind of time out there real quick. We didn't even hit on one of the strengths of this roster, which is their offensive line. You can think of whatever you want of how to rate Dak, and I don't have an especially favorable rating on him. I will completely acknowledge that. Like some of it is an availability question mark because he tends to get weirdly hurt sometimes. Some of it is just I don't see him as a guy that has an especially high ceiling, which is maybe why I'm a little hard on him. But their offensive line is a true strength. This is a top 5 unit. The interior offensive line is a top 2 unit. Skill position group I have as a top 7 unit. All of this conditional on Zach Martin showing up. And to the degree that you have a disgruntled Zach Martin because you paid some other guys, because you paid some free agents, I think is something to watch, because the offensive line you are slated to start with is very, 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 very good. I don't even know who the best of the Smiths are between Tyron and Tyler. I think Tyler Smith is probably a better player, definitely more available. Terrence Steele was solid for you. And your center is a very good player. The problem is beyond that starting 5, this is the worst second and third unit offensive line situation in football.
We've seen that repeatedly. Like, hey, you have top end starters. And yeah, the Tyler Smith, that draft pick, that was great. Like you have a really strong left side. Yeah, like you said, a good center. You've done good at picking up the right pieces, but when they're out, the depth has really been rough at times. So
yeah,
if it stays healthy, yeah, very, very, very good team on paper.
Yeah. So no excuses. Good to look at the schedule. See what we think. Lot favored in a lot of games here, guys. This is high expectations. Implied 9.5 wins. You are dogs in 5 games. Only one of those are you a dog outside of a field goal, and that is at Buffalo week 15. So sky's the limit in terms of wins here. There's a high upside.
Soft landing to start. Bunch of games you should have a damn fine shot at 4-0. It gets really tough there. 2 road games West Coast. It's not as far, but Dallas to the West Coast still is a haul.
Yeah.
So maybe a sleepover spot between the Niners and Chargers in weeks 5 and 6. I know it's a longer week. You get 8 days, so maybe they say we have an extra day. We'll come back to Dallas, but I don't know. Something to monitor to see if they stay out on the West Coast for them. But then you get your bye after that tough stretch. You get the Rams. Obviously, the at Philly game is a huge swing for the season, but the stretch after that, not so bad. It's kind of that secondary stretch, weeks, 14, 15, 16, maybe even 17, if that Detroit offense is clicking. So there's a couple of easy stretches and then a little bit tough at the end, but otherwise a lot of advantageous spots outside of I believe the Chargers have to be coming off a bye then, right?
Yes.
On that. So yeah, not only do you get back-to-back on the West Coast, we get Chargers off the bye, and God, maybe you do just stay out there because they already have that.
Definitely you do. You try to use that 8 days as a mini camp.
Yeah. You
try to get your guys in especially focused state to take on the Chargers there, because they got the week before to screw off. So you might be able to get them. I could see it. Mini camp it, guys. Do it. Stay west. Realistically, though, there's one game you're expected to lose. There are 6 coin flips, and every other game you are a decent favorite, which is pretty cool.
Philly at Buffalo. There's like two losses. Philly at Buffalo.
Okay, so 2, 5, and what's left? 11.
Yeah.
2, 5, and 10. Yeah, that's pretty darn good. 10 expected to win, 5 coin flips, 2 expected to lose. I like it. You're in a really, really, really good spot with this schedule, especially considering how tough some of the other NFC schedules are, particularly in your division.
Yeah, the little difference between this is I mentioned it's unlucky to be a 12-5 team and not have a home playoff game again, but it's a 12-5 team that doesn't have to play a first place schedule too.
Yeah, and you have a couple of legit. You should beat this team going away. You should absolutely handle Washington. You should absolutely handle San Francisco. Actually handle Arizona and LA Rams. If you're even in competitive games there, something's gone horribly wrong. So yeah, this is, I think, a very favorable schedule for you overall. A lot of prime time, decent amount of travel, fair rest, advantages, disadvantages, 4 cold games down the stretch. Those are going to be interesting to see if Dak can kind of snap what has been a bugaboo for him, which is playing outdoors in the winter. I will certainly have those games circled for potential fade the boys.
It's not full Goff, but it borders on it.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, at Buffalo especially concerning.
His name is Rain. It's gonna be soft. Okay, let's look at the betting odds for this team. One of your higher teams in the NFC, and truthfully, it should be like this is one of the best teams in the NFC. It just happens to be in the division with the best team in the NFC. 14-1 to win the Super Bowl, 6-1 to win their conference, plus 175 to take the division, minus 225 to make the playoffs, plus 180 on the comeback. And the win total is juiced heavily to the over 9.5. Basically, it's a flat 10. So that's honestly, win total maybe is a titch low considering the schedule. If they stay healthy, I'm not
used to minus 162 the over.
Yeah, I'm not excited about sitting on that total, or excuse me, sitting on that win total for a long time, especially at a juicy one. Even if I did find a 10, but yeah, I mean, pretty good numbers, all things considered, especially when you are the bridesmaids in the division, depending on what happens with the Niners quarterback situation.
What is your opinion of Micah Parsons' Defensive Player of the Year? Should it be like 2-1, 3-1? Like, what's a fair price? Because it's sure shit ain't 5-1.
So I'm pulling this up quick. And it is one of those things where, and we didn't get there last year because of he just didn't play well enough down the stretch, and what Mahomes did was absolutely worthy of it. But we're getting close to that spot where it's like the voters are saying, "What the fuck are we doing here? How have we never given this guy, this award yet?" Like, all right, Watt got one and Bosa got one, and maybe the other Bosa's in a conversation here too. But boy, howdy, like it does feel like a spot where there's a bit of a narrative around it. Like, hey, we should probably reward if this defense is good. It's just such an easy narrative to write. Like, hey, we need to give this team something.
Yeah,
they're certainly not getting Coach of the Year. They're not getting Offensive Player of the Year. There's no MVP on this team. Rookies. That's a tough hang to try to get an award out of that. So it's their most likely way for voters to award this team for being good. And for sure, like and if he never ever drops in coverage again, like just give him the award, I guess.
So here's the question I have for you. His production waned on paper as you went down the home stretch last year. Like, I remember the game he got the scoop and score against the Bears, I think. I remember thinking, like, it's a wrap. He should be like minus 800, minus 1,000, whatever. I don't care. I guess over. And he waned from there in. The defense didn't really, like, start playing poorly. They were fine. They were good. The Cowboys kept winning. The problem was the Cowboys didn't win the NFC East. I think that there is a very, very, very strong likelihood that a Cowboys NFC East title in the blind makes his candidacy, his probability of winning the award, like in the plus 200 range. Okay, so that's kind of what I would say if you feel like betting Cowboys to win the NFC East, which is right now better than a coin flip. You're getting not. I think it is a coin flip, but I'm saying you're getting a price that's better than 50-50. I almost feel like proxy betting the shit out of Parsons DPOI.
Yeah, he was slowed down a little at the end of the season. And FanDuel has plus 650. That's worth shopping. Because like you said, he can win it without winning the division. If he has the counting stats, if he has the narrative. But if they win the division, it does feel like they need some. There's always a silliness like, we got to reward.
Well, we got to reward someone. It's not going to be McCarthy, not Dak.
Yeah,
not going to give it CeeDee Lamb offensive player of the year. Okay, so we can jump ahead to betting plan. Fuck it, I'm betting it. I'm betting.
Yeah,
biggest preseason position for me is going to be Parsons DPOY. That I've already kind of gotten there. But what I want to ask you then about CeeDee Lamb before moving off all the award talk around the Cowboys, is it a Dak thing or was it a Kellen Moore thing? Because it never really felt like his production met the talent. And if it's a Dak thing, then that's going to happen again. If it was a Kellen Moore thing, then maybe he explodes this year. What's your read?
I don't know how healthy he was either. It was right off the bat, mini camp. He was there for training camp, but he had that hamstring all summer. And then during camp, he did something to his foot. Like he has had a bunch of injuries over the past couple of years. I think a full year of him at 100% is what I want to see before I make judgments. But yeah, I mean, he is very, very good. He's a massive outside weapon. He's a big fucking dude too. Like, I think he's fine. I want to see a full year of him healthy. And maybe it was just, misusing him at times. And also, we do have to remember, we had Cooper Rush for 5 games. That was his style of play was different from Dak's, and obviously the game plan was adjusted accordingly. So, all right. And Sam's on CDOPOY. Hopefully you have to sweat that a little, and he just absolutely obliterates the Commanders twice. You have to cheer against the burgundy and gold a little.
You know what I like about the CeeDee Lamb bet potentially is it finishes decently for him. Go up against some weak secondaries. I guess it depends if Jalen Ramsey is back and playing well on Christmas Eve against Miami, but nice soft landing with Detroit, Washington, week 17, 18. Although the Washington game's outdoors, so who knows? And you may have the division sewed up, so maybe he's not even playing. The Buffalo game, that's a tough matchup for him. The Philly game is a medium tough matchup for him. Down the stretch, there's not a lot of really standout secondaries he has to face. I think CeeDee Lamb is going to have a pretty productive year, but I just don't know if it's a Dak issue. It doesn't really ever feel like he's been on the perfectly on the same page as him. I can't put my finger on it. I kind of hope it was
the
because
supporting cast,
more.
The supporting cast and just the wide receiver / receiver room in general has been in flux so much. There hasn't been a lot of consistency there.
Okay. Last kind of key question about.
I'm going to shop it around. You've talked me into it.
Okay.
I haven't really bet into defensive player of the year. I have a little bit on defensive rookie of the year, but I mean, if I can find 6,
I really think that if the Cowboys win the East, this is a runaway. I really do. And I think Parsons was the best defensive player in the year, best defensive player in the league last year by my grades. I don't think anything's going to change this year. Bosa was the beneficiary of being on a division-winning team and having decent counting stats, and he played better at the end of the season. Otherwise, I don't think he was the better overall campaign. Soft start,
game stuff. Yeah. Do you have anything?
Soft start here for the Cowboys. You think their future prices get aggressively shorter if they if they take care of business in New York, they take care of business in Sunday Night Football against the Giants and then go right away against the Jets. Then they have 2 very winnable games, Arizona, New England. 4-0 start.
We'll get to this in the next podcast, but a 4-0 start probably triggers a bet for me, and it's not on the Cowboys.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. Here you are wearing the Cowboys blue and making, trying to cool my
Kelly
Green.
Team. It'd be quicker to list at this point. It'd be quicker to list the teams that haven't brought out cool jerseys or helmets for this year. Like, we are just blessed with jersey matchups this year.
Yeah, it's good.
We grew up in the area of color rush.
Yeah, you brought up a good point though. We got to come up with a in-game betting plan because the Cowboys are in prime time. Surprise!
Yeah,
a lot.
A lot. We have to understand a little more about the play calling, the play sequencing, the overall game plan that we're going to get from Shoddy and McCarthy to really understand what we're going to see. And I think I'm fine with Quinn and his secondary adjustments if the defense is having issues with anything. But I really need to know a lot more about this offense before I can put a plan together. So excited to read more about the Cowboys and watch them in the preseason a little, and obviously kind of track them through that.
Okay. Let me kind of think through it a little bit here. Really good pass rush in an opponent must pass situation. Best of luck coming back.
Yeah, especially with the addition of Gilmore.
Whew. Yeah. Whew. Your opponent's down a touchdown late. See ya. This sucker's over. Can they put away a lead with the offense and play keep away? I think yes.
The running game is improved, which we think
should
it will be.
Yeah. Comeback mode. Can they stop the run well enough to give themselves a chance to come back? I worry about that.
What do you have for run stop grades on that linebacking crew?
Not great.
Yeah, I was going to say it's middle of the pack at best.
Yeah, that's the only weakness on this team, actually. They're bottom 5 for me. So comeback is concerning for sure, especially because the downfield, pushing the ball downfield type of stuff. I guess you got some elite speed, got a couple options. It's going to be tough for me to talk myself into these guys making a big old comeback. But I kind of feel like betting on the Cowboys as front runners and betting against them as come from behinders.
There you go.
Okay,
I can get down with that.
Okay. Are these guys good enough to win the Super Bowl?
Yeah, for sure.
Range of outcomes includes lifting the Lombardi.
There's probably like 4 teams in the NFC that are good enough to win the Super Bowl. The Cowboys, the Niners, the Eagles, and then one team that we don't know about yet.
Okay.
Like it's whatever.
I thought you were going to tell me who's the fourth.
Like,
I'm dying to know.
The fourth is TBD, but there's always some team that takes a big step forward with the offense or something happens.
Okay, so if the Cowboys are not in the Final Four of the NFC, failure?
It's a disappointment.
Yeah.
Honestly, like they should be if they're not in a 50-50 game to make the NFC title game.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a disappointment.
I think even if they lose their quarterback, I'm still expecting this team to make the playoffs. The wild card is so attainable in the NFC this year that, like, I honestly don't think missing the playoffs is in the range of outcomes. Am I being a little silly?
I mean, it's always in the range of outcomes. You could have such cluster injuries and such bad turnover luck, bad end of game luck that this team could win 7 games, but it would be like oh man, are they ever going to win a 1-score game? Are they ever going to be able to hold the lead late? At that point, we're really, really talking about, they're one of the biggest stories in the NFL because like, how is this team this bad? But realistic range of outcomes is probably 9-13 kind of in that win range there. And, a lot of 10, 11, 12 probably.
Okay. All right. That's realistic, I think.
And then, just a couple quick comments. Yes, Patrick says CD didn't have 1 reception over 40 yards last year. Sam points out he was doubled a lot. Hopefully Cooks opens that up. And then Charles says, speaking of preseason, you guys have anything for tomorrow? Not yet. The board kind of lit up there when we got quarterback news. It flipped favorite, but not a big win probability flip. You went from 1.5 to 1.5, flipped across 0 because we found out that it's funny how like Zach Wilson sucks. He's a bad quarterback, but he's a very good quarterback compared to what we're going to get for a lot of these preseason games. He started a bunch of games at full speed against starting defenses. Like he should be an advantage for the first half at least, again, compared to like Kellen Mond. And I'm excited to see DTR in the second half.
I think Brown's second half and second half over are going to be my looks.
Yeah. Depending
on pricing game state.
Yeah, it's not sounding like you're getting like any defensive starters for Cleveland. And then the Jets are kind of in that same boat too.
No starters,
no starters whatsoever. So I'm going to dig in a little on the depth
quarterback for Cleveland.
Yeah, I'm going to dig in a little on the depth stuff. Yeah, you're not no Dobbs. They're saying it's just Mond and DTR.
Mond first half, DTR second half. I'm willing to take DTR has got the skill set that looks like it should thrive in the preseason, honestly. So I kind of want to play Brown second half at a deficit and or over second half over.
Well, I mean, also just the over. I'm kind of with you
Jets
there.
First half?
I don't mind Jets first half. It's just we haven't had a price yet. Maybe it's out tonight. I'm assuming it'll be the same as the game price, if not bigger. And then, but second half over, I like that because it could be a lot of scrambling around on just god awful shit plays that we're putting out there in the second half. With the DTR was fun if you go watch some highlights. So, and then the half says Jets first half, Browns full game is 8-1. That's a fun prop for sure. We'll I'll talk a little more about that tomorrow. I'm sure I'll have some content up for the preseason.
My price for Jets first half, Browns full game is plus 625. That's my fare. So if you can get 8-1, that's a good bet.
I did find a 625 on Micah Parsons just now.
Oh, look at you! Good.
They took $50. So yeah, you start hitting buttons and just, nope.
Yeah. How's our Texas Rangers doing tonight?
They're up 7-0 on Diane Cease.
Oh, bummer.
I don't think I'm guessing he's not in the game anymore.
No, probably not. Well, let's hope that bullpen and hold on to that lead. All right, man. Texas, feeling it.
All right, stars shine bright. Oh, R.I.P. Pee Wee. That song makes me think of that when he's in Texas and he yells from the phone booth. All right, we'll take a quick break and we'll come back and talk Eagles.
Welcome to the deep dive. Andy, let's go deep on a breakdown of last year's come out of nowhere. No one saw it coming. Number 1 seed in the NFC and ultimate NFC champion, Philadelphia Eagles. How you feeling about last year's campaign in hindsight?
Really well coached, really well schemed, really good game plans from a pass rushing standpoint, really good game plans from a offensive sequencing, offensive just using you use this phrase so many times, Drew, and I love it. Pushing the right buttons at the right time. But that's kind of what sequencing and play calling is just, the joke is like, the people who rail against analytics, like you guys just want to throw the ball on every down. No, there's a lot of spots where this is a much better time to run the ball. It's going to be very efficient against this. And that's kind of the story for that team is they found a bunch of really efficient plays, not the sneak not even mentioned yet. Like
the scrum,
the most fucking cheese, whatever you guys want to call it. When somebody used to play a video game and they just use a stupid move over and over again, and you got mad, or in Madden, if there's that one play that just always works. But it's it was always a good game plan. And Sam points out in the chat here, you could always bank on Philly attacking the weakness of the defense when betting the props. That's spamming. That's a good one, Dan. It's kind of what I was getting at there is just like they knew the assignment every week and they went out there and they put together a very good game plan and they won a shitload of games because of it.
Yeah, I thought they had the best coach last year. At least he deserved more consideration for coach of the year, but that's just me.
Again, this is one of those dumb stats too, but once you get past the initial facade of it is be leading by a bunch at half. Well, no shit, having a lead early and often improves your win probability, but it changes so much about what you have to do to close a game. And I don't know if this, I'm sure everybody would subscribe to that if they could, but they really went out there and did it. They were such a good first half team.
Well,
and it put so many teams, you just talked about this in the last episode with the Cowboys, What about being in a comeback mode against this team? What about being in a comeback mode against a team that has like 8 pretty good pass rushers that they can just cycle through and
an
keep hammering you with?
unstoppable high leverage rushing game.
Pretty good secondary,
Yeah.
good run game, good running quarterback. Very hard to come back against this team.
I mean, in hindsight, extremely impressive that the Chiefs managed to do it. Like that was kind of a tough ask. Like coming back against these guys, not easy.
There was a defensive touchdown, right?
Yeah, it was a scoop and score after an absolutely hilarious fumble by Jalen Hurts.
They needed that. Like
just a true cell phone.
The Eagles were very, very good. Like
they were very
could have won that game.
Yes, they win that game a lot of times. Chiefs to the right side. Don't get me wrong. But Eagles put together a 95th percentile performance because that's what a good coach, well-coached team does. Mm-hmm. They come out in the biggest game of their entire season and lives, careers, whatever, and they kick ass. But the Eagles were awesome last year. Don't let it be misstated. Any of the stuff that we say on this podcast from here forward, the Eagles deserved every bit of the success that they got last year. It was all earned. That said, the schedule was easy. You could see this coming a mile away. When we finally flipped that schedule open and during the pod last year, I'll never remember being like, dope, why wasn't I buying Eagles earlier? Like, this team is going to wreck this schedule. They played no good quarterbacks. They played an extremely favorable sequence of games. And they, honestly, it was the perfect schedule for a team that had pushed their chips in the table by trading for A.J. Brown. And by, kind of deploying their draft capital on pieces that they thought were high leverage. And it all paid off. It was a great run. You got an MVP caliber season out of your quarterback in Jalen Hurts, who you got with second round draft capital. Bravo. You got, top 5 performance.
You brought in Hassan Reddick. You brought in Fletcher Cox.
God,
I mean, they're just like the people they added to the Bradbury, just the people that got added to that defense. Even like some guys didn't contribute as much.
CJ,
Linval Joseph, Ndamukong Suh. Like, you just kept throwing stuff at that defense, and it worked.
Yeah, they went all in around the young quarterback on a rookie deal, and it paid off in spades. And that's kind of the tale of 2022 for the Eagles. They did it in a way that was fantastic. I'm glad you brought up the second quarter lead thing. Like, they generated leads in ways that was like, well done, guys. Your plan A for this defense, chef's kiss. Like, perfectly done plan A for how you're going to attack these guys. Well executed, huge lead. Now play situational football and kill this sucker. And they just did that over and over and over and over again. It was a thing. It was something of beauty. It was a thing you could count on in the playoffs when they went up against the Giants and the Niners. And it was a fun team to bet on in every sense of the word. And very, very excited for them. I think the reality of the fact that they played no good quarterbacks, and that they had so many second half leads, there is a swirling wind of, you bring this exact same unit back with a tougher schedule, and this defense was going to be overrated.
And far fewer coordinators that you had
then
last
take
year.
away, and then take away a coordinator and take away 4 or 5 starters. Now, all of a sudden, there's a reason to look at the defensive side of the ball specifically and say, okay, if they're going to repeat the success, it has to be because the offense takes another step forward. They can't just expect to have the same type of offensive efficiency last year and win all of those same games, because the schedule is much tougher. The sequencing is much less favorable. And you're in a division with an opponent who is pretty close to equal strength in terms of on paper. I do not have a big gap between Dallas and Philadelphia overall in terms of roster strength whatsoever. So you pay Hurts. I thought they did a good job of kind of accelerating that so that you didn't have to like either put him in a weird position this year and or go above whatever Burrow gets compensated. Like that was good to get in line when you did and get that dealt with.
The contract sequencing.
Incredible. Yeah. It was incredible. So, I mean, it's just to say that like, this is a well-run organization. They use analytics the right way. Howie Roseman uses his staff the correct way. Like they make good decisions about personnel, and they have built something that, in the next 10 years, if the Eagles are literally like, what are we doing here? Bottom of the barrel rebuild, I will be floored. Like this is built like it is going to be sort of the premier organization in at least the NFC, if not football, by the way that they're handling their business. It is very, very cool. That said, they have made a lot of bets on Georgia defense, and they better pay off this year because they have
Athens North here.
They have a young, but well adorned defense that they are going to count on to keep, to help them kind of put together another campaign. But you want to know what, man? This offense is freaking awesome. This is just really, it's beauty to behold when you look at strength, balance up and down this roster. Philadelphia offense is truly spectacular. Like they are going to be in every game. They're going to score 1 million fucking points this year. And if they get anything out of the investments they've made in the young defensive players on this roster, then they're going back to the Super Bowl. I'm not really doubting it. That said, 2022, am I characterizing it fairly?
Yeah, there was a lot of easy spots against, minuses as far as quarterbacks go. And I mean, even the teams that were Detroit's, you go look at those Detroit scores, and I was screwed with you because I feel like they were up by 1 billion on Detroit, and Detroit's offense did the same thing they did the year before against the Niners and put a bunch up. But I mean, they held Minnesota to 7. That was an offense that popped off quite a bit. The win against Washington obviously was, good because they ended up losing that team. It just goes to show it doesn't matter how good you are, you really got to show up every single week, because somebody who is 4, 5, 6 games worse than you can give you their best shot and then win on the road like Washington did later. But the wins against Dallas, the wins against the Jags, the win against the Packers, like it's different things showed up every week, and it always just worked. And obviously the late season games that we had to miss from a quarterback, it's maybe underplays. Like this could have been an undefeated team, truthfully. Like if they showed up against Washington and then Hurts plays all the games, like you win those last 2 games as well, probably. But I mean, even that, it was a very impressive game. They just played a lot of weak quarterbacks. I mean,
I don't think they were beating Dallas at Dallas if they're undefeated in that spot. That's too much pressure.
No, and that early Dallas game, I'm sure that was a Cooper Rush game. You go from the Cardinals to Cooper Rush to Pickett to Houston to Washington to the Colts. Like that is a stretch of not having to play very tough quarterbacks for quite a while. And then, even later in the season, you got the Bears thrown in there, you get the Saints thrown in there. There was a bunch of spots where it's like, you're too good to lose. And it's funny, they lost to the Saints because it was a kind of a weird punt at the end of the season. And then, this is funny too, the Packers game. It reminded me of we keep going back to Georgia, but it's like the Georgia TCU game. We're like, oh, you could just run the ball and get a first down every time. Why don't you just keep doing that?
Yeah. That second Dallas game, I know we just covered Dallas and I don't want to go too far down this road, but I forgot how bad McCarthy's decision-making was at the end of that game. Dallas had the ball on the Philly 3 and took a delay game and then kicked a field goal and gave Philly the ball back with 1:41 and a 6-point deficit. They could have very well won on that game. And one other comment about McCarthy before I forget. I think he suffers from the fact that he just looks stupid when he's on camera, because like when things are going wrong, it's so easy for the video editor, video director of the broadcast to be like, give me camera 2. McCarthy looking stupid. Like
McCarthy, McCarthy's
anything's going live.
The dead look in his eyes where he's just like a dairy cow.
Why is this happening? What is going on here?
What are bad things happening?
Why are bad things happening now? But anyway, Sirianni doesn't have that problem. Back to the Eagles.
No, and I guess, more into there isn't as much to say about this team last season. Like there's not a lot we need to cover because a lot of it is just going to cover how we're going to talk about this team. But the coordinator thing, that outside of losing some defensive pieces, I think the coordinator thing is the biggest spot for me. Maybe not Gannon as much, although might find out that like he was a very big part of what made them successful. But the loss of the OC strike, that one kind of hurts, I think.
Yeah, and Shane Steichen is subtraction by subtraction. Jonathan Gannon is question mark by subtraction.
Yeah, I dug in a little on the new OC. He is the all-time winningest quarterback at Utah, by the way.
How about that?
Yeah, you want to know who his first coach was when he was a quarterback at Utah?
Yeah, it was.
No,
what? It was Urban Meyer.
He was there for the last year of Urban Meyer before Whittingham took over. And it's funny. So after he graduated, tried to make it back, didn't he? Ended up going and working for Whittingham, but worked his way up. But yeah, I just end up down these stupid rabbit holes when I'm looking at new coaches that I don't know a ton about.
I couldn't have told you Brian Johnson was a former quarterback.
No, Brian, the quarterback room, his freshman year with Urban Meyer, he was behind Alex Smith.
Oh, okay. Wow.
But the third stringer was Pharaoh Tagliavailoa, which is Tua's uncle.
What?
I know this.
Wow.
This is what I did this afternoon. All
right.
But yeah, no, I don't know a ton about him. He's been in some, obviously he was. He's been in some decent systems. He's come up, and they have faith in him to give him this job. But that's a big question mark.
Yes, Steichen killed. Okay. Final thoughts on 2022 before we get into the offseason?
No.
One of any
I guess
of these
my biggest hope, because
yeah.
I hate the just what happens to a fan base when you see a window close so fast.
Yeah.
I hope the defense remains good and they're okay, because, man, they probably should have won the game. And if their window closes that quick after, maybe not even the fans. I don't give a shit about the fans. I'm just so impressed with the front office and the moves they made. I want this to have a 3-4 year window for them. Yeah.
In some order, one of 4 things happens differently, and I think they probably win. Hurts doesn't fumble. 6.
Yeah.
Sirianni goes for it instead of punting late or kicking the field goal. I forget what he did, but he had a pretty convertible set of downs that he kind of lost his nerve about being aggressive and going for it at the exact wrong time, because that was such a perfectly awesome characteristic of Sirianni all year long, was pushing the right buttons at the right time, rushing for 3 yards on 3rd and 4 to set up the scrum on 4th and 1. Like, that stuff was just a master at work, maestro, just bang, bang, bang. He was killing it, and he lost his nerve at the wrong time. That changed that decision. I think that maybe the game ends a little differently. Bradbury, if he makes a play instead of committing the penalty in the end zone, the game may end literally. And of course, the sod father. If the sod father didn't water the shit out of the field, then the defense might have had a little bit more purchase in the pass rush, and maybe Mahomes doesn't have as much time.
We're going to be talking about the fucking poor sod father for years.
Yeah, so it was, there was a path there where Eagles come out as Super Bowl champions, and that would have been cool for them. I think they're still very much live. They're going to win. I think if you maybe set a market fair price that Hurts wins the Super Bowl after seeing the way he conducted himself in last year's Super Bowl in his career, I'm going to probably make it like minus 150. I think it's going to happen.
Even money, I'm more pessimistic about everyone in general. It's just so hard to do, because we've seen like the best team in the league many, many, many times does not win the Super Bowl. It's so hard. Everything.
just have
has to
faith
go
in the
right.
organization.
Yeah, I like it.
And Hurts is a guy that I think consistently is going to be ranked top 5 in quarterbacks among quarterbacks. He's going to be squarely in that tier too. I think he's got the goods.
Sure.
I don't think there's really I don't think he has to get over some athletic hump where, he's, because his effectiveness on the ground looks repeatable to me. The shoulder injury that took him out of the games against Dallas and New Orleans was pretty fluky, I thought. It wasn't a matter of the way they were utilizing him, I didn't think. So Hurts ultimately gets there, I think, with Sirianni. But yeah, the coordinator thing is a big question. And I like the Brian Johnson hire, fine. He looked like that was always part of the plan. Like, if we lose Steichen, this is what we're going to do. No idea what to make of Sean Desai, but there was enough of a absolute stink on Gannon after the 2021 campaign that I think there's a decent section of the Philadelphia faithful who are probably like addition by subtraction. See you later, dude. Like, there's definitely some people who probably are expecting a more well-coordinated defense. And, in 2021 with a lot of the similar personnel, they were just not very creative. And they were creative last year. Like, they definitely showed signs of life, but they were playing with such a positive game state so often that it's really tough to give them a fair shake in the evaluation standpoint, which is why I think they're a little overrated this year. Off-season greats. Biggest personnel move, in your opinion, was who they lost or who they retained?
I mean, they did retain. It's tough with such a good roster because just like keeping people is good. I love that the Carter fell in their lap because of some of the issues. It will remain to see how much it hurts to lose like CJ, GJ, and Edwards, and we'll see what the right side of the offensive line looks like. I don't know. In your grading, do you have Tyler Steen in your starting 5 up front?
Yes.
Because it doesn't sound like he's starting.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. Well,
it's
that changes things.
Yeah, so they did draft him.
There?
It's I think we're gonna put Cam Jurgens. This is just digging in today on some of the camp battles. It sounds like they wrote Steen in, and now it's like, hey, Jurgens is taking all the first reps at right guard now.
You know what?
I believe he was backing up Kelsey.
It doesn't matter. They're neither of them.
I was going to say it probably doesn't matter. I just forgot I was going to note that for you because I caught it today. But
yeah, thank you for saying that. I can tell you this live on the air as I update my player rankings. Right now, I have the Philadelphia Eagles as the 4th best offensive line in football. And that's somewhat controversial because I think a lot of people would just tell you they're the best, right? If I move Jurgens in for Steen, then they move to the 3rd best offensive line football. So it actually does matter.
Look at us. Look at
us.
How about that? Yeah, I thought we were going to have one of those tweets where it's like Tyler Steen, Eagles Super Bowl odds, Cam Jurgens, Eagles Super Bowl odds.
Same number. No, I actually do move them up a notch. I didn't realize that it was that close between 3 and 4. The 3rd offensive line I had was Detroit. They flip-flop with Detroit if you move Jurgens into the starting lineup. So how about that? I didn't realize. No, the offseason for me, it was interesting that they retained Slay and Bradbury. You looked at the defense overall at one point right before free agency. When people put out the list and they're like, here are the best free agents. Here are the guys that might be free agents. Here are the guys to keep an eye on, right? And you go through that list, and I go through the depth chart that everybody ends their season with, and I put a highlight on everybody who is maybe going to leave just to get a sense of how much turnover there could be on any given roster. At one point, I had almost the entire starting Philly defense highlighted to either, is this guy going to retire? Is he going to go to free agency? Are they going to retain him or what? It was like they could turn over an entire starting 11. Like, that seems impossible. Now, they ultimately retained Fletcher Cox, decides not to retire. Josh Sweat is back. Hassan Reddick is back. Who else we got? Darius Slade comes back on a team-friendly kind of deal, which is interesting to me. Bradbury similarly. Like, they're sticking around, these guys, some of these older guys. And I don't know how much they've got left in the tank, but I mean, Bradbury and Slay were great last year for most of the season. They stumbled at times late. I thought you could be critical of them, but I really was, you're looking for reasons to pick on the Eagles at that point in the season. They're going to be probably very solid contributors for the balance here. So a lot of turnover, but I think they retained the right parts. I give them the benefit of the doubt, surely, right? Like they know what they're doing. And yes, now we have Jalen Carter. Nakobe Dean moves into a starting role. You have Nolan Smith as backup. Jordan Davis is a backup. That's 4 Georgia Bulldogs. Are there more that I'm forgetting about?
There's a lot.
Kylie Ringo. There are a lot of national championship Bulldogs on this roster. And the question remains, were those guys just individually as talented as the sum of the parts or what? And we're going to find out because they all have pretty huge roles this year. I rated the losses as meaningful here. TJ Edwards mattered. Javon Hargraves mattered. I think Isaac Seumalo mattered. He was the guard that they're replacing with Juergens.
Because Juergens is like, he's the heir apparent at center once we get a retirement. But right now he's like, you have to step in and guard. You're playing immediately.
Marcus Epps mattered a little. CJ mattered a little. Kazir White mattered a little. Linval Joseph didn't matter much. Robert Quinn didn't matter much. And Ndamukong Suh didn't matter much. Andre Dillard didn't matter much. Gardner Minshew didn't matter much. So a lot of losses, a lot of names, a lot on the defensive side of the ball. Miles Sanders was a -2. I think you got to say, like, he didn't really get a ton of credit for what he brought to the team last year, but he did his job. He did his job as a running back. He was good. Definitely a top 10 guy across the league, at least. So considering what they had to do with retaining players, with signing Hurts, with making tough decisions at the defensive side of the ball, with replacing 2 coordinators, and with having meaningful draft capital, but not amazing draft capital, I think the Eagles get an A.
Yeah, you're relying on some youth. You're relying on some unknowns on the defensive line at middle linebacker. A little bit on the offensive line, and obviously at both coordinator spots. So there's a little more unknown. But we went into last season basically just, there was no gas in the tank. That was hype powered. And we still got there. So, and yeah, part of why Miles Sanders and just the run game in general is good is the scheme, the offensive line, and the quarterback. That makes a big difference as well. But I'm fine. You know what? B+.
Okay. Here's
just because I'm mad about losing 2 coordinators. It's like, it's such a shitty thing.
Yeah.
It's such a badge of honor as well. Or the Niners just losing a defensive coordinator every year for how many years now.
So question for you is, are they done? Or do you think there's another potential surprise move here? Because they have some cap space.
Scott.
They've got
I don't
some
know.
cap
I'm not
space.
sure where they would add, obviously I don't know who's out there that you would go chase.
You think they would just convert Hurts' salary and eat it as opposed to adding a player? Because they got some space right now.
If it helps next year's dead money and whatnot, and you figure it out. But I think if I'm making a move, I'm doing it mid-season. I'm kind of in wait and see mode. I'm not adding something right now. I'm seeing where I need to add later on. And they were, you don't make huge moves that way usually. We do see the occasional big midseason trade, but they were perfectly fine bringing in players, last season to shore things up. So probably maybe status quo with that.
Okay. Yeah.
And I do want to kind of sidebar rant here. I've seen way too many articles about why insert NFL team that this person is a beat writer for should trade for, Colts running back. Why is his name escaping?
Jonathan Taylor.
It's no, what? Have you not seen how teams are treating free agent running backs? They won't pay anybody. Now they're going to trade a bunch of assets to the team for the chance to pay him a bunch. Like none of this is happening. He's gonna be
Yeah.
Colt, right?
The only owner dumb enough to do that already employs him.
Yeah, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like that's just not feasible because you're not only paying a running back a lot more than you probably want to. Like you have to trade assets for a running back. That's not something we want to be doing unless, like we mentioned, unless your running back is also like 75% of a slot receiver, like the Niners got last year.
Sure. I can't imagine that story. That's not a serious story.
I've seen it for like 6 different teams now. It's like,
crazy.
oh, hey, the Vikings lost Cook. Should they be looking at this? Or the Cowboys? There was a Cowboys writer that said, here, this might be a good idea because now we're a little thin. No, what are you doing?
Okay. Well, let's gloss a little more about the offensive roster because right now, so far, we've just talked about how there are some big questions on the defensive side. You got
a good tight end. You brought in another tight end to back him up. You got a good one. Obviously, it's a top 5 wide receiver 1-2 punch, probably top 3. Zacchaeus, haven't really seen him, I guess, with a good offense yet. Sorry, Atlanta, but I'm trying to think. Was he in Atlanta last year? Or has he moved around a little?
Yeah, he was. Yeah. It doesn't really move the needle for me. I mean, it's fine. But realistically,
if they like him enough to add him to the roster, I'm bullish on him to improve on last year's stats. Your
1-2 punch at wide receiver 1 and 2 is amazing. Good tight end you mentioned. DeAndre Swift, an interesting move to bring him in, and actually your running back room has so much redundancy and depth. It's kind of weird. The offensive line is it's incredible outside of the one question mark at right guard.
There's probably a running back that won't make the roster that is going to just get picked up right away because they have like 5 running backs and they're all good enough to play for NFL teams.
Yeah,
you can't keep everybody, I don't think.
No, Lane Johnson, one of the best right tackles in football, if not the best. Jason Kelsey, one of the best centers in football, if not the best. Landon Dickerson, one of the best left guards in football, if not the best. Jordan Mailata, well above replacement level left tackle, and question mark for Cam Jurgens. But when everybody else is that strong, I think they can afford to give you some help. They can give you some help. Jalen Hurts for me is the top 5 quarterback, no questions asked. I would hem and haw and think extremely hard if the Ravens called me up and said player for player Lamar Jackson for Jalen Hurts after the way we saw Jalen Hurts comport himself in last year's playoff run. What would you say?
I'd probably just keep him.
Keep Hurts, yeah. Familiar with your system. Good locker room chemistry. Yeah, I think you do. This offense is going to score buckets this year, which makes them a fun, different type of handicap, I think. And I think that's really where we make our money with these guys this year, is that people are going to assume one thing based on what they saw last year, and it's going to be a little different because this team, I think, can get out to leads still, but they're going to concede some of those leads potentially. And they're going to be a team that I think is going to be a lot more live in comeback mode. Eagles, for what it's worth, were not a great team in comeback mode. Like they barely came back against the Colts. They barely came back against a handful of pretty questionable teams last year, and did not against the Commanders, did not against the Saints.
I was impressed with the Jaguars game where they got punched.
Yeah, that was good.
That was like the first punch in the mouth.
Weird weather in that one though.
They brushed that one off, but yeah, against teams that held up well with the lead, it was a little different. And like the Colts game was, I mean, that was outside of the games they actually lost late in the season for way different reasons. That Washington Colts stretch, that was like a hard double hiccup.
Surely. Yeah, that's why they signed Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, because they couldn't stop the run, Andy.
Yeah. Like we just need some huge dudes that aren't playing for someone right now.
No. All right. Let's look at the schedule. The Eagles draw a much tougher strength of opponent this year compared to last year, albeit we are implying 10 wins based on win probability and there are questions in my mind about you being dogs at the Jets, I have a strong suspicion that you will not be getting Eagles at plus money in that spot. Call me crazy, but Eagles will be favored. KC, you will be dogs, but you're coming off a bye. At Dallas, you'll be dogs, but it's a coin flip of a game, as every Dallas game is going to be with you. You are at a rest disadvantage 5 times. That's kind of the test the NFL is throwing your way. And they are making you travel a couple of times against opponents that are going to kind of give you a test, including Seattle and the Giants. In fact, just in general, tough travel down the stretch at Dallas, at Seattle versus the Giants at home.
Well, not only that, but just after, like a meat grinder of what?
KC Buffs,
three of the best
Dallas
teams in the league right in a row, followed by Dallas, Seattle back-to-back road games, and then the Giants. The Giants aren't a pushover, despite that being a 7-point favorite. And it's at least home. But you had the Giants twice. That's going to be a pesky team, and at least you have Arizona. I guess there's always that. There's always a little silver lining. But after the bye, that's a fucking grinder.
Holy shit! Those 4 games are ridiculous. KC, Buffalo, San Fran, Dallas.
Yeah, rest up.
What the hell?
Only 2 are on the road. And they're separated at least. But after that, like you said, you face one of the weaker teams out of that stretch in Seattle, but it's a really shitty travel spot.
I have that as the top 4 rosters, 4 of the top 5 rosters in the NFL in consecutive weeks. And the only top 5 team you're not playing is yourself. That's the only top 5 team that's not in there.
So if we just ranked them 1 through 31, you're playing the 4 toughest teams available.
Correct.
Yeah, that sucks. I mean, you have to do what you did last year. You have to get out to a hot start. You don't have to be 8-0, but man, you hit that bye.
You better, yeah.
You better have 7 wins.
Yeah, you got to hit it. How many wins do you think they have at the bye, Andy? Set a line for me.
7 or 8. I'd set it 7.5. Juice to the under. Minus
really?
130.
Okay, so 7-2 you think is the most likely. This is kind of the modal outcome there.
Couple coin flips, but yeah, I think 7. Like, probably 50% of the time you have 7 wins, and there's a lower probability of having 8-9. It would feel bad to have fewer than 6, obviously, but even 6-3. And if you split we need a name for that stretch of 4 games, 2 of them on prime time. At Buffalo, you have the little bit of the rest disadvantage coming off a Monday night game at Kansas City, coming home 1 fewer days to prepare for Buffalo, and then a week to prepare for the Niners. You get to at least stay at home, and you can go through this a multitude of different ways. It sucks. And then, you hopeful. Best case scenario is the Giants are eliminated at some point from the playoffs, because there's a really realistic shot that the Giants are very much vying for a wild card spot those last 3 weeks, and you're getting your best shots from them.
Yeah.
Boy.
Yeah,
you need 7. You need 7 wins, because it's a struggle to get 5 after the bye.
I'm having a tough time figuring out who the 2 teams are that are going to beat you in that stretch. You know what I mean?
I'm just throwing in a weird one. Like there's
weird
also
one?
a weird one.
A weird no-show and the Dolphins or something.
I mean, even like Tampa.
I kind of
you get a big risk. You get a rest advantage, but like Tampa, the Dolphins, the Jets, Dallas, those are games that could be problematic.
I don't think you're losing to the Jets.
It's not a great matchup for them, but it's still at the Jets.
True.
It's a lot better quarterback play than
I mean, they may be a desperate 0-5. It might be a kitchen sink game for the Jets, Andy.
Everything but. So, all right, let's take a look at their odds. Super Bowl 8-1. 330 to win the NFC I'm guessing you could probably find a 4 if you hunt. NFC East chalk, minus 115, a little better. Making the playoffs, minus 400. Sure. Plus 300 to miss. I wouldn't bet that.
Nope.
Feels like worst case scenario. Man, what kind of scenario would it have to be for them to completely miss the playoffs in the NFC?
I mean, it's got to be Marcus Mariota time.
Yeah, that plus like you've been forced to forfeit a game by Goodell for like some sort of illegal gambling ring or some sort of like, maybe something very
Devontae
nefarious.
Smith and AJ Brown were betting each other on a team plane, and that's against the rules.
Yeah, you signed an Iowa kicker.
Yeah,
win total.
They were matching on Ole Miss, Alabama on a plane.
Alabama baseball.
Yeah.
Win total's 11.5, juice to the under because it should be. That's a high total. Doesn't matter how good you are. A lot of things still have to go right to win 12 out of 17 games. And this league, numbers are probably pretty good. But considering that easy start, I don't think it's a wait and see team. If you like the Eagles to come back, I'm not sure you're getting a better Super Bowl price than 8 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
They'd really have to stumble through that tough stretch after the bye for it to drop considerably. And if they'd won 7 or 8 games heading into the bye, how far can it really fall? So it's probably a buy early, buy often if you like it. And like I said, I joked a little on the previous show. If Dallas starts out hot, maybe you get a little better price than the division. If we're really writing the Dallas narrative.
Belichick. We need Belichick to do something special week 1.
Yeah, God willing. If the Eagles, if there's a spot where the Eagles are 3-1 and there's any doubt, and we're writing all these narratives about the 4-0 Cowboys, that's an entry point for me on Philly.
What we need is Belichick to really put a lid on the Eagles offense week 1. And then the big takeaways week 1, everybody's reacting to the games like, this Hurts been figured out. A year. Everybody spent the off season studying the tape. Hurts is solved. Belichick put together the blueprint. And then
he's been solved.
He's been solved. Cowboys Cowboys later that night beat the crap out of the Giants. And then people are like, oh, I guess this is the Cowboys division to lose. The next couple of games aren't going to really help your case. Although Tampa could there's a realistic chance, I think, that Philly's offense with New England, Tampa, and Washington, all 3 in the first 4, that's a good enough trio of defenses that potentially a quarter of the way through the season, people don't realize that this is clearly a top 3 offense in the NFL. Right? Like there's enough of a Ben Johnson's still figuring out how he wants to sequence his plays, what he wants to do to scheme against certain defenses, right? Like that's possible that we get 2-2 through 4 weeks with 3 weeks where the offense just isn't clicking yet. People are like, did the Eagles overpay Hurts? Has he been figured out?
Disaster.
Super Bowl hangover.
Yeah. The Super Bowl hangover, disaster contract. They're hung with this, huge contract for a long time now. And oh my God. Yeah, that's a buy spot.
Okay. I can see it.
Range of outcomes. Let's do I want you to go full devil's advocate realistically. Let's not do anything where the Goodell takes away wins truthfully, we do have to go to a spot where like Jalen Hurts misses a good chunk of the season. That's everybody's bottom outcome is the quarterback misses big time. You just don't have a good fill in. Not that you have a terrible backup. He started plenty in the league. It's maybe something you can make work short term. But if Hurts is completely healthy this year, but less effective,
sure.
And maybe there's some attrition on the offensive line because of age.
Sure.
And, the play calling sequencing, the offensive game plan isn't as crisp with the new coordinator.
Yeah.
And the defense takes a little step back. How low can this team realistically go? That's still
10 wins. 10 wins.
Like 8 would be
shocking. Yeah.
Go pick
Yeah.
Go pick 9 losses. Even if all that's happening, go find 9 games they still lose with this roster. Very hard to probably 9 or 10 is your absolute floor if if you're not suffering huge cluster or quarterback injuries. Ceiling's probably 13, 14 wins.
13, 14. Yeah.
Super
I don't
Bowl
think
win.
I don't think you're coming close to last year's output personally.
Not with that stretch lead.
I think this is
sucks.
I think this is narrow band 12, 11, 12.
It does feel good to maybe if you get through that stretch, you play 4 close games, you get 2 wins.
Yeah.
You can write that off in the locker room as a coach, as an iron sharpens iron.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, we've been through hell and back, and now we're gonna maybe at that point, like Saquon's hurt already, and the Giants aren't actually that good.
We're building into
we have like 3 easy ones to get into the playoffs on, and we're gonna win those 3 games. We're gonna get the 1 seed. We're gonna take a game off to get healthy, and we're gonna do it again. We're going back, and this time we're getting hardware. Other than the NFC trophy? The Hallis trophy? I know it's the
Hallis,
Lamar Hunt
Hunt
is
and
the AFC
Hallis?
one.
Yeah, that would make sense.
That sounds right.
You know what? Not Eagles fans, don't take this personally. Best of luck getting them to react rationally, I suppose. But
Grease the polls before you lay this one down.
I want Eagles in as a wild card. I'm excited about what those markets are going to be like.
Strictly for the prices you'd get?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't game.
Because I'm not excited about them being the 1 seed and having teams come through Philly on rest and betting against them at all.
We were last year.
No, that's what I'm saying. You get what I'm getting at, right?
Game, yeah.
Like the prices are going to be tilted towards Philly if they're the 1 seed again, and teams have to come through and play them on rest, right?
I guess it depends how they're playing as a front runner. If it's like last year and be like, oh no, this Giants defense is like, this is not a good matchup. Like they're going to kind of do what they want. Like we're fine laying a touchdown there.
I think
it does depends how they're playing
what I'm getting at is
again.
Yeah, I know, but what I'm getting at is last year they were 7.5-point dogs hosting the Giants. That was one of the bets of the playoffs. They were 2.5-point dogs hosting the Niners. Now the Niners had no quarterbacks ultimately in that game, so it's a little tilted, but I still think the Eagles were a great bet. You're not getting Eagles under 3.
That one felt like you got away with something.
You're not getting Eagles under 3 this year in the playoffs at home. I don't think. I think people are going to have enough recognition of how good they were in the Super Bowl last year, and if they're the 1 seed again, I think there's going to be a little bit of a surcharge on Eagles in the playoffs if they're the home 1 seed, which means I think the best case scenario for finding value come playoff time in the NFC is going to be if the Eagles are the road warriors. I think.
All right.
And I think they're going to be in the playoffs no matter what. So I think that reality of 50% of the time they are in the playoffs, but not the NFC East champions are the ones that I'm the most excited about. Even if they're the 2 seed and you get, a weak wild card, you get to lay the points with them as the 2 versus 7. And then they have a tough 2-3 matchup. And then at San Francisco, like that's a fun one. Let's say San Francisco runs away with the 1 seed because the NFC West is so dog shit. What is your number going to be for Eagles at San Francisco this year in the NFC Championship game in the Bay this time?
I mean, it's hard to say at this point, what those teams look like in 25 weeks, but
of course, I'm not telling you give me an accurate number. I'm just, what's your gut say? What does that market?
It's like a pick 'em, isn't it? I'd currently on paper, I'd have the Eagles probably 1.5 better than the Niners, 2. If it depends, so much depends on the quarterback out there. But if we get last year's Niners team, and that game probably should have been about a pick 'em.
Okay.
Here's a good question: is there an entry point on Hurts MVP?
Great question.
I love
Showtime.
Showtime 102.
There
First
absolutely is. I think if he plays all 17 games last year, he probably beats Mahomes. Even if he loses at Dallas,
he had so much steam coming into the final quarter of the season, and missing those games just dicked it, and probably dicked Sirianni's coach of the year as well. Like that, it just fell. And losing those 2 games obviously was bad for both. But boy, they went to hell in a hurry.
My entry point, there is an entry point, without question, in my opinion, and it is Week 5 at the Rams, because that stretch then. Rams, Jets, Dolphins, Commanders, Dallas at home into the bye. I think they can reel off 5 wins there. So if you're from 2-2 and he's now being talked about as overpaid and teams have figured him out and blah, blah, blah. But AJ Brown is healthy and the offensive line is still winning their 1v1s. But mostly it was just they were up against tough defenses and they didn't quite get to 30 points or whatever. Then I think the entry point is probably Week 5. I think you want an MVP ticket before they turn their season around and go into that stretch. KC, Buffs, San Fran, Dallas. They're going to need to win 3 of those games, in my opinion, for him to get realistic consideration. But if they do win 3 of those games, then he could be kind of very much in a discussion. They need the 1 seed for him to get it, in my opinion.
Yeah. And it's such a, Eric, not a single Eagle won an award. That was, it was looking like, heading into that final quarter of the season, be like, are they going to get the MVP and the Coach of the Year?
Travesty.
It was kind of rough that neither of them got an award. So maybe if they can nail down the 1 seed again and he looks really good, maybe there's a good case for it. But there's also hey, we're at Week 5 and Mahomes is thrown for 1,800 yards already, and he's on pace for 6,000 yards and 52 touchdowns. Maybe I pumped the brakes. Everything's price dependent, and it's such a fluid market, narrative based, counting stats based, win based, expectations based, and you got to see what everyone else is doing, because there's a good case for a former MVP in Baltimore to suddenly have a really good offense, and that narrative spikes. Because it's something, it's been a couple years since we've been excited about that. It's shiny and new again. It's, whatever, we're recycling that one. It's fun. Let's get behind Lamar.
Yeah.
There's a non-zero chance that we see the kind of Aaron Rodgers we saw 2 years ago. I know you're not I know you're out on that, but it's within the realm of possibility, because it was not that long ago, and there's some decent pieces around him.
If Devontae Adams gets traded to the Jets, I will pivot my opinion on a dime. But right now, with that skill group and that offensive line and that coordinator,
you need a second.
I think Patrick's right. There are 5.5 players who I think can realistically
win. Josh Allen yet?
Yes, it's Mahomes, Josh Allen, Hurts,
Lamar,
Joe Burrow, Lamar, and I'm going to give a half to Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
I don't think realistically Trevor Lawrence has got the goods. I don't think realistically
it's so hard.
Brock
so he's in the same spot where the Chargers would have to win the division, it feels like.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I only give him a half.
It's a half.
Yeah, he's not winning the MVP if they get second in the West. And that's where they are.
Whereas that's where I think the Rodgers thing checks out, because it's such a narrative-based bullshit thing where if the Jets are markedly better and it's because of him, and that there are some issues with Buffalo, if they win it doesn't have to be like a 15-win season. It can be like, hey, you and Buffalo finished 12-5 each, but you got the tiebreaker. You just won a division for the New York Jets, and you're in New York, it's kind of a low ceiling for him, and all it takes is the offense to be competent, which is kind of a high bar to clear considering who they have. But I'm going to give him a quarter.
Okay. So Patrick was right. There's
people
5.
are betting Justin Fields can win the MVP. Yeah. Did you see Suma tweet that out? There was a book that has him down to 9-1. I mean, it was It was like a paper ad. I'm sure that it was pretty rough. The overall odds, the hold was 1 trillion.
Look, if you have a raging hard Justin Fields boner, just go bet offensive player of the year.
Yeah.
Like if he makes the leap of his lifetime this year,
he's probably rushing for 1,400 yards in that scenario.
Yeah,
if he makes that leap, and you're going to be talking
games.
about him in that.
Yeah, and the Bears are still winning 9 games. Like honestly, the team wins is what ultimately completely.
Yeah, it's like, they're the 7th seed, but he threw for 3,400, ran for 13.
I like his chances better than Trey Lance.
I don't know if Trey Lance is good or not. I've never seen him play. Guy has literally never played a down of football. He didn't even get to play like his senior season. They had remember they had that extra, they basically had a 1-game season just to get him a showcase game for the draft.
Yeah,
it's been a weird journey following him.
So Hurts, for what it's worth, of the 6 guys we mentioned, I'll give Herbert a full count, whatever. Of the 6 guys we mentioned, Hurts has the longest odds right now at 14-1. I think if they're 3-1 or 2-2, and the Cowboys are 4-0, and people are saying stuff like, if the mind hive of the betting space is Hurts has been solved in some way, shape, or form because they've just happened to play 3 tough defenses, I would bet him at 30-1. I think that's the buy point I would look for Hurts MVP, because they can absolutely win that stretch of 4 games, which would make everyone think, oh, this is the guy. And there's a makeup factor. I think that actually is real. Especially
if, you know what wins him the MVP? Winning 3 out of those 4 games in that stretch. Doing that probably gets you the 1 seed or gets you the division at least. But the optics of beating 3 really good teams, a couple of them on prime time, that suddenly he's now it's like a 2 or 3 man race, and he, like you said, you're sitting on a bigger ticket early in the season. So, all right, the betting plan is wait and see on this offense, and maybe some award markets scattered throughout the season and some adds to the portfolio.
Andy, we got to talk about next week. I'm done with talking Eagles. I think we got these guys pretty good this year. I'm excited to bet some Eagles games. Really excited. I'm going to give this Patriots plus the points a serious consideration between now and week 1. I think the Patriots can keep that to 3.
What's that out to? I saw somebody tweet
4.5, right?
Forever ago, and they were excited about taking a 2.5 or whatever it opened at.
4.5. I'm going to probably take the Patriots in that one, at least contest picks, if not actually just betting them. All right. The big question now, what are we going to do next week? Do we just we stay on our heater right into the AFC North? Or do we go AFC South and get the stinker out of the way?
Honestly, flip a coin. That said, I'm on vacation in 2 weeks. So 2 weeks from now, it will be the NFC South.
Okay.
So do you want to do stinker?
Yeah, to end. Yeah, I'd rather do stinker to end. We can keep those pods to 30 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, let's go. Yeah, let's go AFC North.
Yeah, I
think we have the NFC West.
Yeah, we're cranking. I think we go right into the AFC North next week. Let's talk Steelers and Browns and Ravens and Bengals.
Oh my. All right. Hey, appreciate you guys hanging out for the last couple hours. Appreciate Drew for showing up.
Apologies for running late, guys.
No,
I value your time. I do.
I hadn't given him shit yet, so had to get that out of the way. If you're in the YouTube, hit the thumbs up. That really helps. Obviously, subscribe. That helps a lot too. Share with your friends. Comment on the post in the YouTube is a big boost. Little things you can do to help us out. If you listened on a podcast feed, leave us a nice 5-star review. Follow us on Twitter. Hang out whenever. See you in the Discord. We'll catch you next Monday.
How did negotiation.
The PowerPoint negotiation talks.
Sign up for the Survivor League in the description, please.
Yeah.
All right, I want to make sure we said that.
Survivor
Sign up for
League.
Survivor, guys. Survivor football. Washington
away
Commanders,
Super Bowl
week 1.
tickets.
Super Bowl
Winners-
tickets to the winner. It's free. Link in the
Winners
description.
going to Vegas.
Winners